that of majoritarian democracies. The good news is that contrary to the conventional wisdom, there is no trade-off at all between governing effectiveness and high-quality democracy. Hence, no difficult decision to be made on giving priority to one or the other objective. And I'm talking way too much, so I will at this time be very happy to hear your questions.
We'll do the question and answer period now. So
yeah. Yes.
In the single transferable vote, when you say it goes from you transfer the vote from the lowest and the highest, who does it get transferred to and how?
Your next preference. If your vote counts for your number one choice until that person is either eliminated.
Okay, so you still have a ranking system.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
A preferential ballot. So if that person gets eliminated, your whole vote goes to your number two. Suppose your number one choice gets elected, but he got twice as many votes as he needed, then you only used half your vote. So the other half of your vote will go to your second choice.
Okay.
Yes?
You were mentioning women get squeezed out of the system. What about people with disabilities? What happens to them? Do they get squeezed out of the system too?
Indeed. It's about the incentives built into the system. If you're only going to elect one person in a riding, you only got one candidate to put up, that you want that person to be the sort of lowest common denominator. The very last thing you want is anybody who's different in any way. So that's why our legislatures are full of middle-aged white male lawyers. Don't get me wrong, many of my best friends are middle-aged white male lawyers, but absolutely, we know this. Any kind of difference will tend to squeeze you out of the system. And the trick's not getting elected; it's getting nominated. We know that when women get nominated in electable ridings, they've got a better chance of getting elected than men. But the trick is getting nominated because the parties will, and even, the parties, central parties, have for 20 years been pushing people to nominate more women. We need more women. We got to have, our percentages are down. We got to nominate more women. And the local ridings, it's very hard to get them to do it because I know we can elect Bob, but we're not so sure about Judy. So but the thing is, if you've got 10 candidates, then you can have Bob and Judy and let the voters decide. And the voters are liable to like Judy as much as they like Bob. And that applies to women, it applies to minorities, and it applies to any sort of minority, including disabled people.
First. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have any idea of the various systems, how they handle spoiled ballots or people who reject them because they just say none of the above? And the other thing that I was curious about is what systems have mandatory, how many of them have mandatory voting?
So, strictly speaking, those things are not a function of the voting system, and those things work independently. The question is, what about spoiled ballots, and what about compulsory voting? Okay, Australia has compulsory voting, and that's a separate argument. And some people, you get 98% turnout in compulsory voting, absolutely, but what about the quality of that vote? I spent a lot of time thinking about who I want to vote for, and I hate to think that somebody went in there just marked something, whatever, just I got to do it. But these are the things we talk about. And spoiled ballot, again, they have these rather bizarre rules in Australia that you have, if it's a preferential ballot, you have to rank every candidate. Which, if there's 30 candidates on the ballot, you have to rank them all on number 30. Which is a pain in the butt, and it resulted in a lot of spoiled ballots, which is why they went to what they call an above-the-line system. So you can do that on what they call below the line, or you can just, on a separate part of the ballot, you can just pick a party, and I vote for all these guys in the order the party put them. In which, basically, it's now a party list system with a single transferable vote option, right? Because 90% of them, 95% of them vote above the line now. But again, those are separate questions.
Question?
Yeah, Wayne, I'm curious to know, I'm thinking about the example you gave of Germany and how their electoral system was changed as a result of the aftermath of the war. And I'm wondering, in the past 50 years, are there any other examples of countries that have reformed or changed their voting systems, and what was the catalyst for that?
I don't know if I can tell you about catalysts in particular countries. I know that Hungary uses that type of system now, and Venezuela uses that type of system. More recently, in the 90s, New Zealand went through a period of these brutal right-wing governments, and they threw the government out, and the other guys just kept doing the same thing. And they had 2 elections in a row where the party with the most votes lost the election. And as a result of that, they had a campaign for proportional representation. They had a series of referendums and ended up choosing the next member proportional system. So now, in New Zealand, they have a system that's based on the German model. And they've had 5 or 6 elections now. And interestingly, they have not formed coalitions. Every government they've elected is run as a minority, but every one of them has served out its full term. It's like they took them one election for the politicians to figure out, okay, the rules are different now. And there were definitely some growing pains. But after one election, they sort of figured out, and New Zealand politics has settled down and it's working pretty well. And they're about to actually have another referendum, because a couple of elections ago, the Conservative sort of said, we demand a referendum because we consider this system. But now that the Conservatives have finally gotten in, and they've acted that, okay, they're holding the referendum because they said they'd hold a referendum, but even the Prime Minister is saying, well, I probably support the voting system because it's working okay. So that's definitely a great model for us. Now, also there are a few other countries as well, but another couple of interesting examples is over the last decade in the United Kingdom, both Scotland and Wales have demanded and gotten their own local parliament, regional parliaments. And since they're starting from scratch, they also set up mixed member systems more or less based on the German, based on New Zealand really, which is in turn based on Germany. And things seem to be working pretty well.
And do you think that came about, like, I'm trying to get a sense of what does it take to reform a voting system? Like, as you said, you kind of stick with the system you've got and you've inherited it from your, so I'm trying to get a sense of, given kind of the voter apathy in Canada, what's the likelihood that we would get people to reform the system, let alone come out and vote? You know what I mean? Like, it's...
Yeah, well, it's...
I'm just trying to get, what's the spark that ignites that kind of...
The catch-22, of course, is that it has to be the government that changes the voting system. But the government was elected under the current system. And people who got elected under the current system tend to think the current system's working just fine. But nevertheless, things do change from time to time. And as I said, in New Zealand, they had this situation where they had a string of really unpopular governments from both the right and the left, and 2 elections in a row where the party that got the most votes lost the election. And everybody said, this is a problem, this isn't right. Plus, I think they were combined with a situation where they were having a televised election debate, and the Prime Minister meant to say, we will not have a referendum, and instead he said, we'll have a referendum. And then sort of, we pointed out, he said he had to follow through on his promise, sort of like the fall of the Berlin Wall. So it's a combination of things that come up, unexpected circumstances, opportunities that come along. What happened, you may know that we had 2 citizens' assemblies here in Canada, and it started in British Columbia. In 1996, they had a provincial election in British Columbia. The Liberals, there was Gordon Campbell's first election as leader. The Liberals got the most votes, and the NDP formed a majority government.
What's